Hello and welcome to 15 Minutes. My guest tonight is Gladiator Mardinus Maximus of the arena. Mardinus, how are you?
I'm good.
So you're a pretty famous gladiator from what I understand.
I am.
How many times were you victorious in the arena? What was your record?
36 times I won. They were all kills.
Is it common to have killed all of your opponents in the arena?
No, not often. I usually killed my opponents. However, injured gladiators may sometimes be spared.
I see. And how did that work? How does a gladiator get spared?
It's usually by public opinion. No, the crowd will cheer their approval, and the editor will make the final say on if the gladiator should be spared or not.
So what does a gladiator such as yourself do when you're not fighting?
Nowadays, I usually spend a lot of time with my family, but that wasn't always the case. When I was a novice, after I was first captured by the Roman army, I spent all my days in the Ludus Magnus, where I was in school. I had a couple of arena battles in Ludus Magnus every day, but I was never allowed outside. As I kept fighting and kept winning, I was soon able to, my reputation grew, and I was soon able to earn my freedom. And after that I was able to live outside of Ludus Magnus with my wife and family.
So is there a symbol that you received as a sign of your freedom?
Yeah, I get the esteemed wooden sword, which signified that I was now a Roman citizen. I have risen through the ranks, and I have earned my freedom.
Who was it who gave you this symbol, this rudis?
The Emperor, actually. He attends all the games, and he's the one that granted my freedom after I had won my 36th, I believe, victory.
So I have to ask, what's with the helmet?
Well, I'm a Secutor, and this helmet distinguishes me from the rest of the gladiators. As you can see from the full face protection, my usual fighting opponent is the Retiari, and this protects me from the sharp prongs of their trident.
So what kinds of weapons distinguish you from other sorts of gladiators?
So I have the short sword, which I use. I also have a buckler, and a chain link arm guard for one of my arms. As opposed to the Retiari.
What types of weapons or other distinctions did the Retiari have to keep them separate from other gladiators?
The Retiari are styled after fishermen. They have a weighted net, trident, but no helmets or armor, except on one of their arms, which is the manica, the metal sleeve.
Have you ever gotten a chance to retire as a gladiator?
Yeah, I originally started as a slave gladiator. After my 5 years fighting, I was granted freedom. In which case, now I'm retired, and I assist in the training of gladiators in the Ludus Magnus. So, from Ludus Magnus, translated to the Great Gladiatorial School, was the largest of the 4 main gladiatorial schools in Rome. The types of gladiators that trained here required the most space. You have the Esidari, or war chariot gladiators, the Equis, the horseback and sword gladiators, Lacerari, lasso gladiators, Retiari, the net for trident gladiators, and the Velites, the groups of gladiators with spears.
Alright, go.
Ludus Magnus also had a tunnel leading directly to the Gate of Life, where the gladiators made their entry into the Colosseum. The Gate of Life, or Porta Santa Bavaria, was the entryway to the fighting arena. This gate was the opposite of the Gate of Death, or the Porta Libitinensis, which the dead gladiators were dragged through once they had fallen. The complex was discovered in 1937, but 20 years later, excavations had terminated.
So the Ludus Magnus, is that where you gladiators train?
Yes, it is. I personally train there. It is the largest of four, actually. It was there are the Ludus Tacticus, Ludus Gallicus, and the Ludus Matitinus, where they trained the bestiari, the gladiators who fought animals. So Ludus Magnus is the largest of the four. It is they're all close in proximity to the Colosseum. Ludus Magnus actually had a tunnel underneath it that ran from the southwestern corner into the actual Colosseum.
You can't talk about gladiators without talking about the Colosseum. Let's hear about that.
Well, yes, of course, the Colosseum. As you may have heard, it's the biggest entertainment building in Rome. It was 287 feet long, 180 feet wide, and had 36 trapdoors to allow for quick entry of other gladiators, exotic scenery, wild animals.
Going back to your novice days as a gladiator, what was it like living in the Ludus Magnus?
Well, as you can imagine, living in a training facility wouldn't exactly be comfortable. There were 3 stories of cells. Each cell had usually 2 gladiators in each room. There were also rooms for, Ludus Magnus was so big, there was also room for the slaves who worked in the Colosseum and in the Ludus Magnus, staff, there was rooms for training equipment, and actually underneath the cells there was space for up to 3,000 spectators to watch any practice battles or any training that went on.
What was it like training at the Ludus Magnus? What sort of skills did you have to learn? What sort of exercises do you have to go through?
When you first enter training, you need to be in peak physical condition, and there's a lot of training for that. When we get into training, we are given wooden swords, which are heavier than regular swords, to build arm strength. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here, and I look forward to talking to you again.
When gladiators first begun their training as novices at schools such as the Ludus Magnus, they didn't train with real weapons. Later, as they broke into the different classes, Retiarius, Secutor, etc., they required special training. Heavy armored gladiators were slower, whereas opposed to light armored gladiators were faster. Similarly, the different weapons they used, the tridents, the nets, short swords, anything like that, required specialty training to master. The pallus was a wooden pole where the gladiators would practice their different types of strikes. There was also a device that, when struck, would swing around and a sandbag would hit the gladiators. This would teach them to stay on their toes. But the most important things gladiators learned in their training schools was how to die with honor.